While the magic spinner is spinning. I'm having problems with this computer. Or maybe it's just the internet.
Right, we're good here. We're live here.
We are live there? Mine's not showing live. What the hell?
We're live here, and then you should be able to go live on Instagram. Oh, what's up, guys? Welcome to What the F Happened. We'll get started here in just one moment. Chris Naugle gets his technology set up real quick.
All right. Sorry about that, folks. I couldn't get it to go live. What's happening, everybody? Another week, another What the F happened. And oh my goodness, is there a lot in the news to talk about? Some things that maybe you don't recognize what's going on, but we're going to hit them hard, dead on, as to what's coming. Why are we headed to a recession? Some more signals, some more things are happening right now. You think all is well because the markets are doing what they're doing, or maybe not doing what they're doing. But if you look at Treasury yields, they are on the move up. What does that mean? Lots of risk perceived by the markets in the short term. What is the short term? Well, election's only a couple weeks away. We're going to hit some of that. We're going to talk a little bit about McDonald's, or should we call it Donald's? We're going to talk about a bunch of things in the news. And with that, we'll be right back. All right, back at it. Well, folks, there's a lot to talk about. We're streaming live from Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, and we are going to rant today. Boy, that's what this show's all about. It's about ranting, raving, and maybe arguing. But we haven't had TikTok, so we don't really argue anymore about what's going on in the news. And boy, there's plenty in the news. Again, today, markets are down a couple hundred points, shedding a lot, about 0.5% already on the Dow Jones, about 30 basis points, on the S&P, and the NASDAQ's down pretty heavy again. So it's been a week for the markets, but also the Treasury yields. Now, I don't really like that, but Treasury yields have been going up, which what that means is there's a lot more risk in the short term, because when Treasury yields go up, usually it's because the markets are going down. It's because the markets are building in fear in the short term. Well, that makes sense. We got an election coming up and a lot of stuff with the election to talk about today. But Stephen, coming in from Florida, what's happening down there, and where do you think we should start today?
Yeah, man. I mean, I'm excited. A lot happening right now. Obviously, I know you're coming down to the Sunshine State yourself this weekend, which is pretty cool. So I'll see you on Friday in, as Jason Sipple says, the city of beautiful Orlando, Florida, for the fantastic event. So that should be a good time. And of course, next week we have Halloween on Thursday. The following week is, biggest day of our lifetime, possibly, Election Day. And a couple days after that, we have the Private Money Club biannual Money Tank event in Charlotte, North Carolina. So super exciting next couple weeks coming up. But to start today, Chris, I just wanted to say that for all the hate that Donald Trump receives from so many people, he finally did it, Chris. He finally did the unthinkable. He finally did what nobody thought was possible. I can sum it up with a picture. Let me just share my screen here. He fixed the McDonald's ice cream machines. So thank you, Donald Trump. You did what nobody thought was ever possible. So for that, sir, you earn my vote in a couple weeks on Election Day.
Yeah, well, those darn shake machines, I remember watching Founders, and a lot to those shake machines. Glad he fixed it. But on that note, in the news, I try to look at all the news stations just so I get a nice broad base. And when we're talking about the news on here, we always start with CNBC, probably one of the worst news stations you can watch, but that's where I always start. I don't go to Fox News, because then people would be like, oh, you're only watching Fox. No, actually, I'm on CNBC and then CNN. So one of the interesting things about Donald Trump, his rally that he had, and how he stopped by a McDonald's and decided to work as a fry cook because Kamala said she worked for McDonald's. But you know, it's funny in the news and even on this channel, the biggest thing they said is it was staged. And like, I'm thinking about this. I'm like, yeah, of course it was staged. Of course, Donald Trump doesn't work for McDonald's. Like, it was, of course, staged. They had Secret Service go in. They had it all planned. They showed up. I mean, I'm sure it was kind of, you know, done in the hurry because he was just happened to be there. But yeah, it was staged. But they're making this whole thing about it. It's just like, why would anyone think that it wasn't staged? Like, it's as silly and as dumb as it is, as staged as it is, it still makes a point. That's all that it does. It just makes a point. And I don't know. It's interesting. I mean, I don't really ever follow the polls and I don't believe the polls, but you know, it's sure the hell. Number one, when Kamala came on Fox News, which I couldn't believe she was doing in the first place, and basically totally bombed. I don't know. Like, I love when you know, on CNBC or CNN, you hear them say, oh, she ran that interview. She owned that interview. I was watching it live when she did it from my kitchen. And I've watched it numerous times and I'm like, where did she own any of it? Like, it was hard to watch. I mean, I kind of felt bad for her and I shouldn't feel bad for her, but I did. I'm just like, wow, you really were not prepared for this interview. But I think they failed to realize how many people actually watch Fox News. I didn't realize it either. I didn't know Fox News was like that popular, because when you looked at the polls after she bombed her interview, like they moved. And then when you look at the polls now after the McDonald's thing, they moved a lot. So I had no idea that any of that stuff could possibly move the polls. Stephen, what's your take on that?
No, it's definitely, you know, it's old school politics. It's a politician going out there with the people showing. I mean, they're freaking out. The propaganda wing of the Democratic Party, otherwise known as the legacy media these days, they're freaking out over the McDonald's thing because Kamala Harris could never do it that way. She's not comfortable in her own skin around regular people. And to see Trump go in there and he was having fun, he was making jokes, he was doing what he needed to do, he was talking with people, like, she just can't do that. So they freak out about this stuff, come up with all these crazy spin headlines, and it's so transparent. And if you just have any kind of open mind at all, if you're not completely brainwashed by this point by legacy media, I mean, it's so easy to spot and see. And just the headlines really are fascinating. But you brought the polls, Chris. I'm with you. I mean, I've never been asked a question about a poll. I don't know anybody that ever has. Has anybody ever actually been polled in one of these polls that supposedly we take all this data from? But it's like, who is part of these polls first off? So I don't believe them either, but I'm a big believer in following the money. So where are people, you know, like, shut up or put up, like, put your money where your mouth is. And so I look at the poly market, and the poly market is the largest worldwide, you know, in the United States betting market when it comes to politics. So $2.3 billion in volume, and they have Donald Trump soaring right now, almost 64% to win here in a couple weeks. And you can see, you know, to your point, Chris, I mean, this was around the Fox News interview right here, and she felt like a rock after that. So you're spot on. I mean, everybody thought that she was going to get a boost when it came after the Democratic National Convention. She did a little bit here, but it phased out very, very quickly, and it's just been downhill ever since. And so, you know, you start to see people like Joe Biden keeps coming out and making little remarks, making real low key little digs at her. You can tell he was caught on a hot mic recently, just saying how ridiculous it is. Actually, it was him and Obama talking about just how ridiculous it is that they just gave her the nomination. You could tell how bitter. I mean, he worked his entire life. He's been in politics for 50 years. So nothing else, nothing else, useless human being. But anyways, he's done it his entire life to earn that presidential nomination and become the president of the United States, regardless of how it happened in 2020. We're not even talking about that. He did it though. Somehow they did it. And so he felt he earned that. And for them, and he felt he earned a second term. I mean, they went through the primaries, people voted on him. He was going to be the guy up until an hour before he was no longer the guy, where they forced him to resign, forced him to say, I'm not going to be the nominee. They installed Kamala, and he's bitter about it, man. He's bitter about it. So we're going to see more and more of that, but it's slowly all unfolding right now, it seems, for Kamala Harris.
Yeah. And I see a question down here. Corey Brown coming in from YouTube says, Chris, give me one reason why I should vote for Trump. 34 convictions and only one care about billionaires. Not quite sure about the other one. So first thing, Corey, like I shouldn't have to give you any reasons. I mean, you can vote for whoever you want to vote for. I mean, you do live in the United States of America, the land of the free, and you can vote for whoever you want. But I'll give you my reason why. Number one, Donald Trump already was in office and showed that he can be a very good deterrent against our enemies. Okay. Iran, Russia, China, for that matter. I have a 4-year-old daughter. You know what I go to bed sometimes fearing, because I don't have a lot of fears outside of snakes, but I fear a world war and I fear a civil war. So my number one reason, and there's many, but I'll just give you the number one reason, would be I feel in the event of a world war or the brink of a world war, which just so you know, Corey, we are on the brink of a world war and a civil war. Ray Dalio says we have a 1 in 3 shot of being in a civil war after this election. So I feel that the leadership that Trump would bring, the deterrent, and that's really the key word, the deterrent that Donald Trump would bring to the United States as somebody that actually would stand up and literally say, you aren't going to push us around. We're the United States, would keep us out of a war, or at least keep us at bay with a world war breaking out. And I also think that it would be the best way to go in the event of a civil war. So those are my two fears. And I just feel like that decision there. Now, let me give you a selfish reason, Corey, because, hey, listen, we all vote in selfish ways. I'm a self-employed entrepreneur. I'm a high net worth, and I'm not a billionaire. I'm not 100 millionaire. Okay. But I'm a high net worth earner, and therefore taxes matter. I'm not even going to say the amount, but I paid a lot in taxes. And listen, I should have. I got to pay my fair share, right? If I make a lot, I got to pay a lot. But knowing the tax plan for Kamala, okay, knowing what her tax plan is would mean that my taxes will go up significantly, which will also mean that my family will not be able to live will live a lesser of a life, I suppose. Will mean I will have less money to give. So the tax reasons for Kamala would be why she wouldn't get my vote. And Trump's tax plan is more favorable for entrepreneurs and for the United States of America businesses. Now, you can go all your ways. We're going to cover tariffs, so we can go there. But those are my reasons. But, Corey, I'll just put it back on you. I mean, vote for whoever you want to vote for. I mean, if you want to vote for higher taxes, and I get it. Like, one of the guys in my office said, well, none of those taxes would affect me. None of what I say, Kamala's tax plans would affect me. I don't make enough money. I don't have enough in assets to ding any of those. So like none of that would matter to me. So therefore, like, I don't care that she's talking about raising the taxes on the wealthy. Okay. And then I said to him, and this is exactly what I said, Corey, and this is what I'll say to you. I say, it won't affect you. Point made. I totally understand that. You're right. Like Kamala's tax increases will not affect you, but they will, because they'll affect me, and you work for me. And when my taxes go up and I got to pay more in taxes and I get hit on every single level from a tax standpoint because of the president and their policies, guess what that's going to mean? I'm going to have to make cuts. And I assure you I will make cuts, because my job as the CEO of a company is to make sure that company outlives me. And what that means is I got to cut people. And guess what? You work for me. So your job is on the line. Now, does that tax cut or that tax increase matter to you? And he said, well, that's a really good point. I never thought about it like that. I said, nobody does. But think of who that's going to affect. It's going to be all the self-employed business owners like myself and many much larger companies in the United States of America. Who do you work for, Corey? Is your job on the line because they're going to have to pay more in taxes? These are just some of the thoughts. But listen, like, I don't like you any less because you're voting for Kamala. Like, you can vote for whoever you want. Like, the guy right in the office next to me is voting for Kamala. Do you think he shows up to work and we sit there and banter? Do you think I give him a stinky eye when he comes in? Hell no. I still love the guy. Like, he's great. He does a great job for me. He can vote for whoever he wants, and so can you. But just understand that just because I'm voting for Trump shouldn't make you like me any less. I can have my opinion just like you can have your opinion. That's the beauty about living in this country. And if you're not okay with that, get on a fucking plane and go to China and live there. Go to Russia and live there. Go to some communist-run country and understand what that's like, because that's what you're basically voting for. All right.
Yeah, and Chris, I mean, that's a great answer. I mean, and it's the truth.
There's
But
no
just
reason to
to
be upset with somebody for voting for Kamala or the other side. I mean,
well, there's
on my street, I've got Trump signs. I've got all the Republican signs. And across the street, my neighbor has Harris signs. Do you think I go over there and rip her signs out or think about like doing bad things? Hell no. When they walk by my house, they say hello. They're kind of a little weird now to me because I got Trump shit, but I'm like, I treat them no different. The guy was walking down the street the other day. I pulled my car up. I rolled my window down. They had just got a new car. I said, hey, I noticed you got a new car. Congratulations. I love it. And we talked. I said, hey, was that the car that was over there on Main Street and like we just had a conversation. Yeah, I could tell he was a bit standoffish, but I just think that's the problem. Like, why is there a 1 in 3 chance of a civil war? It's because of that, because people just can't accept that people are going to vote the other way. Like, I grew up in a time where grandpa was voting for one person and his best friend was voting for someone else, and they still were sitting there fishing together. Like, and they were just, they might throw a 1 or 2, kicks below the belt about it. Oh yeah, well, you're voting for so and so. That's blah blah. Yeah, way to go, buddy. But it was all in good fun. I don't know.
Can I just clear up one thing though? First off, the 34 convictions is bullshit. It will be overturned.
I was going to say that, Steve.
It will.
Anybody that brings that up doesn't understand.
It will be overturned. I mean, the state of New York did something they've never done in the history of the legal system in the state of New York. They had to completely twist just to make this fit, and then it's complete crap. It'll be overturned, and then so let's get our information and facts straight first off, and then. It wasn't 34 convictions. It was one conviction on a bullshit charge that's never been done before that they turned into 34 thing, whatever. And then the second thing is only for billionaires. I don't understand that comment in any way.
That's why I didn't go there.
Form, fashion, anything like that. I mean, all of the stuff that Trump's doing is for people. I mean, the largest unions in the country, the auto worker unions, the largest unions in this country, the members are overwhelmingly supporting Trump. I mean, so that should tell you all you want to know. I mean, the only surrogate that Kamala has right now, that's out there trying to really like push her stuff and really be there for her is billionaire Mark Cuban. I mean, so to say that is just it's simple.
But why do you think Mark Cuban's like on her side? I gotta sometimes think. I sometimes what?
It's blackmail. It has to be.
Exactly. And listen, I don't expect all of you to agree with this, but in these times, like there's a lot of people that are doing things that just don't logically make sense. And with all the stuff with P. Diddy and all this other stuff, and there's lots of it that comes out in the news, most you don't see, you got to get it in white paper, but all these things happening with sex trafficking and everything else. I mean, you ever think that somebody's decision is made because like, if that person doesn't get in, they're probably going to jail or something, that they did in their past is going to come to light? Because Trump has made it very clear he's going to basically open the can of worms. He's going to pretty much declassify all of that stuff. So we're going to finally, for the first time, I think in my 47-year life, we're going to know some truth. We're going to know the truth about JFK. We're going to know the truth about a lot of things. And you know what? The truth hurts, but I'm going to tell you, I can handle it. And I want to know. I just do. I just want transparency. And you're not going to get that with Kamala ever. And Cuban's probably got some skeletons in the closet. Like, I'm not saying I'd like or dislike Cuban. I have nothing bad to say about him, but there's something that doesn't make sense about that, because being a billionaire, he knows that they're going after billionaires, or so you commented. Like, why would he vote for that? Yeah, blackmail.
Yeah, I mean, he said, are you saying that Trump, my taxes will be significantly lower? And no, nobody's ever going to really do it.
That is very well possible that his taxes.
Here's the thing, Chris. The taxes are taxes. If you're smart financially, you come to our 3-day money school trainings, you come to our events, you're going to learn how to legally save a lot on taxes, period. It's all the loopholes. The tax code book is this thick for a reason. All the politicians do it. All the billionaires do it. That's never going to change. I mean, is it going to change a percentage point or two for middle America? Sure. But it's not going to really affect your life in any way. What does affect your life, which is a hidden tax, is inflation. So go back 4, 5, 6, 7 years ago. What did your grocery bills look like? What did it look like when you got gasoline? What did it look like when you purchased a vehicle? What did it look like to live everyday expenses? And it was about 30% lower 6 years ago. So, you got to read between the lines sometimes what these people are doing. And that inflation is driven 100% through the Green New Deal policies and the Inflation Reduction. It's government spending, pumping money in to the economy the way they've done over the last 3.5 years causes what we've seen over the last 3.5 years. It's simple economics.
Yeah. But I agree, Corey. Like everything you're saying in that comment, I never, and you're saying, am I Trump's going to be significantly lower? I mean, depends would be the way I'd answer that. I mean, if you read Trump's policies, which are clearly outlined, you just Google it, depending on what your profession is, which I don't know, Corey, but, depending on your profession, what you do, what your, income levels are, like your taxes, yes, could significantly be reduced under Trump. But there's no proof. There's no, thing with that. And also with Kamala, there's no 100% because things have to get passed. But the other thing that I liked that you said that you lived in China for 2 years. So you saw what that was like. I mean, I'm not saying that Kamala is going to turn the United States into a communist nation, but I will say this, and this is my opinion, but I think it's based with some fact. If Kamala and her administration took over, the United States would be very vulnerable to an attack. That's all I'm saying. I want the best for my daughter. I want her to grow up in a United States that I became accustomed to. Some things which I don't love about the United States now, but it's still the greatest country on the face of the earth. Okay. And if you look at the universe, we're just a tiny little speckle of grain of salt, if even that, in the grand scheme of things. But it's still the coolest place to live and the best place to live. And I want my daughter to realize that. And I don't want my daughter to, I read a lot of history books. I don't want my daughter to go through a world war. And I certainly don't want my daughter to ever live through a civil war. My God, that's my biggest fear. And under Kamala, I think we got a very strong probability of those. Under Trump, I think we've got a very strong probability of those not happening. And that you could see from the prior 4 years, the proof is already sealed and delivered of what that would be like from a pure deterrent standpoint with these other enemies. That's the only thing you can call them. But hey, listen, like, I don't know. I vote for whoever you want to. I mean, whatever. I mean, it is what it is. It's just the thing I can't stand is when somebody like, and I'm glad you mentioned like you don't like me any less. I can't stand when somebody doesn't like accept that we live in a country where we're free to vote for whoever we are. And we're technically, you got the freedom of speech too. We can say whatever we want to say. So on this show, I could say whatever I want, but I respect your freedom of choice. That's it. And I'll leave it at that. So let's keep going with this because we could go all day long about that. But
yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I think we need to take, one of the most genius of our time when it comes to investing, Warren Buffett's advice. He came out and said, all kinds of people have been saying, he's endorsing people and endorsing investments. He actually came on his website because it's become so bad on social media. And he said, in light of their increased usage of social media, there have been numerous fraudulent claims regarding Mr. Buffett's endorsement of investment products, as well as an endorsement of support of political candidates. Mr. Buffett does not currently and will not prospectively endorse investment products or endorse and support political candidates. And he said, I'm worried about people impersonating me. And that's why we put that on the Berkshire website. Nobody should believe anybody saying I'm telling them how to invest or how to vote. So very nicely done there, Warren Buffett, like always.
I think Warren's always stood a middle ground. I mean, I've followed Warren for a very long time, just like I followed Trump for a very long time. I mean, from when I was a young, I guess, adult, when I had my businesses, I read Trump's book. I remember I wanted to go through the Trump courses. Like I just was always a fan. Like I thought he was a good entrepreneur. Listen, like there's a ton of things I don't like about Trump. I think he needs to sometimes just keep his fucking mouth shut. Doesn't know when to stop. I hate his rants. But it just comes down to just who's going to be better for the future of the United States of America in a future that my daughter has to live in when I might not. Like, I just feel that's the better choice. I truly do. So we'll get off of that. And like, I'm not going to go into the insurrection. We all have a different opinion of what happened on that insurrection, and
right.
We're not even going to go there. So, Corey, you've got your mind made up. Awesome, dude. Like, let's high five, like, go Kamala, like, good luck, like best of luck. That's all I can say. I mean, it's not like anything I could say that would sway you or turn the decision. And we're a couple weeks out. I think at this stage of the game, most people are kind of already locked and loaded on who they're going to vote for. And there's very little that would sway them. But I mean, it doesn't hurt to watch all the craziness going on out there and just sit there and say, holy shit. I don't know. But there's a reason you're voting for Kamala, and I don't know what it is. But Corey, one final thing, and then we're going to put a lid on this, bud. Don't vote for Kamala because you hate Trump. Like, just don't vote for Kamala just because that seems to be the case. And when I ask people, why are you voting for Kamala, in a very nice way? Well, because Trump this, because Trump. No. What about Kamala's policies do you like? That's the question. And don't say, oh, the insurrection and the 34 charges and this and no. What about Kamala do you like? That's all I want to know. And hopefully you can answer that before we're done. But we got to move on. There are some other pressing things going on, like mortgage demand drops to its lowest level since July. Interest rates are now at summer highs. So that's some top line news. Let's see. There was one other one I just saw. This is important. And it's the very bottom of the news. And I bet you by this afternoon, this article will be gone because I've seen this happen before. North Korea troops have been sent to Russia, U.S. confirms. So North Korea is sending troops to Russia. All right. So all I got to ask you all, is that a good thing or a bad thing? You know, the Israel-Iran thing. And how about the leakage of that, Stephen? I'm sure you got some stuff on that. Like, you know, where our government leaked information about Israel attacking Iran or something to that extent. I read about the other day. I didn't go deep into it, but do you have anything on that? Because that to me, that's treason. Just putting it out there. 100%. Israel is our ally. Love it or hate it. They're our ally. And leaking information to the enemy, straight up treason. And, you know, back in the day, if I'm not mistaken, they shot you for that or hung you for that. But I guess in today's world, that's just okay. Like insider trading for Nancy Pelosi is just okay because she's a politician. Stephen, what do you have to say about that?
Yeah. I mean, you're absolutely right. It's treason. It's terrible. I'm sure it happened. There's denials coming out of the Pentagon, obviously. And it's one of those things I think you'll never really know the truth of. I mean, I don't know, you know?
Yeah. So never know the truth.
There's no transparency anymore. There's no accountability anymore. It's tough, man. I mean, I hope things turn around at some point in this country because politics are brutal right now.
Yeah, I mean, Kim Jong-un, when I look at this photo in this article on CNBC, which will probably be gone, when I look at it and I'm looking at all these soldiers, these are children. Literally, like, just like in the front row, there's 1 there, 2, 3, 4. Now, listen, maybe I just don't know how to judge age, but that one right there, that person can't be more than 12 years old. Like, I don't know, whatever. You know, there's a lot to be said about war, and none of it is good. But Stephen, what else you got? I got a bunch of stuff I want to talk about the markets and the economy and kind of what's going on there. But what are some of the things you've got on your queue? Because I know we've been talking about lots of stuff.
Yeah. I mean, just kind of same stuff. I mean, it's you know, we're, like I said, we're boiling down. We got a week and a little less than 2 weeks till the election. It's full on mode right now. I mean, Trump is going on Joe Rogan's podcast Friday, which, you know, be a big thing, big to do. Kamala is she's got an interview coming up on CBS. She's got another interview coming up somewhere, and she took like 2 or 3 days off of the campaign trail to prepare for these interviews. It's just, it's pathetic. If you can't sit down and just have a simple conversation with somebody about what your thoughts are, what your beliefs are, what your opinion the country should be going in, what your policy is. If you can't just spit that off at this point, you have no business running for president. Like, it's pathetic, and it's just making me mad. So I hope that the Trump vote is big enough that it can't be stolen again. It can't be cheated again. It can't be whatever you want to say. And I hope we move on from this. You know, I'm a little worried about that, but that's it, man. I mean, it's kind of the same shit, a different day right now in this cycle.
Yeah, no, it's pretty interesting. I mean, you know, the markets have definitely not been doing all that well this week. And I think it's just signs. And if I can, I'm just going to pivot over here, get my glasses on. I mean, I now subscribe to 3 different economist newsletters. And the unique thing about it, and I'll just preface this, is a lot of people ask, well, where do you get your information from? Well, number one, I don't get my information from the news. I might get an idea from the news, and that's what this show's about, is ranting and raving and arguing about the news. You know, just like you heard earlier, like, you know, with Corey. Corey's, I'm sure, a great human being. And, you know, don't make any opinions about him. You know, like, we all should literally just disregard who somebody's voting for, like, and go back to, like, Are they a good human being? And that's what we should judge people on. Like, do they do good for the world, and not, well, you're voting for Kamala, so you're a scumbag or you're an idiot. Like, they say the same thing about, people voting for Trump. You're an idiot. You're a scumbag. Like, oh, well, like, just, it is what it is. We all have our own viewpoints. But anyway, with the markets, there is no, I'm trying to put this, I've got so many videos on this, so I'm just trying to unpack it the simplest way. These economists are all from different sides. Like, one is, loves treasury bonds. You hear me talk about treasury bonds a lot. I'm still a huge proponent of treasury bonds. And I think now with treasury bond yields going up, that means prices going down even lower. It's even a better time to buy right now. I just looked earlier. One of my favorite ETFs that I hold in my portfolio is down even lower than it was. So I'm gobbling up more, like, because I know for a fact the Fed is going to continue lowering rates, because if the market keeps shedding like this, it's going to hit a point where it's just going to free fall. And we're not far from that, just so you all know. If we keep shedding like this, eventually it's going to free fall. We're getting closer to the election. The reason the market's held up and has been held up for the last year, maybe even 2 years, is simply because of politics. And it's a game. And somebody had mentioned something about interest rates. I saw the comment, but it was something to the extent that, the Democrats are going to bring interest rates down. The Democrats have zero control over interest rates. The interest rate is 100% in the control of the Fed. The Fed is not owned by the United States government. They're a private institution. The Satan sits on the board. If you want to know who the board members are, I mean, he sits at the head. Read The Creature from Jekyll Island if you need to learn more. But these economists all have different viewpoints, which is why I like having different viewpoints from multiples. But here's one, and this is called AI bubble peak. So this, you probably don't need to know this stuff, but there's this thing called Elliott wave, okay? And there's Elliott wave international, which basically shows like a 5-way pattern. So you can research Elliott wave. I mean, it's not important, but basically we are in the final wave of the pattern. So when you look at a chart, and I don't need to really get into this, like, where is it going to go? And what they're basically saying is the Elliott wave is basically saying that we are now extended into the third wave. We're in the middle, and it's a perfect bounce, and it's going to bounce down, which is where it's going right now. So in other words, he says, how can this possibly end well, especially with the tightening into July 2023, still not hit fury in early 2025. So he is predicting, this economist is predicting that the markets will fall up to 80%. Now, where is that coming from? Well, he's an economist and he's a chartist. So he looks at the charts and he looks at all these different things like the Elliott wave and all these different data points. And he has literally come to the consensus it's going to fall 80%. Now, the other economist that I follow is a gold bug. Loves gold, talks a lot about gold. I'll talk about some of his stuff in just a second, but he is saying you can expect to see a drop of 50 to 60% minimum. But he also is saying that real estate is going to take a major hit. So when you put two economists, and there's a third, which I didn't print anything out from him, you're starting to see where this is going to end up. So the other thing I want to point out is, it doesn't matter if Trump or Kamala gets in. I want to be clear about this. It doesn't matter if Trump or Kamala gets in. The markets are going to fall. They're going to free fall. That there's nothing either one of these candidates will do for the markets. Now, I think, my opinion solely, so, don't take this, as the gospel, but I think Trump would have a better shot of turning things around in the economy and getting us back on track, but it will take time. So no matter what, all you folks need to know is there's a lot of pain from a financial standpoint and an economic standpoint coming, regardless of who gets in office, regardless. So take politics off the table. We're heading down. The ship has got to go down, and then it'll come back up. Okay. I don't know how long that will take. So that's a really important thing. And all this stuff that you see in the news is even pointing to that and hinting to that. September home sales down to the lowest level since 2010. Go ahead. Yeah. There we go. You want to hit that, Stephen?
Yeah, I mean, that's data coming out this morning.
I just saw that.
U.S. existing home sales fall to 14-year low in September. So fell a percentage point to 3.84 million in September. Housing inventory up 1.5% to 1.139 million units. Median existing home price rises 3% for a year ago period. And on top of that, we're also seeing mortgage demand drops to its lowest level since July as interest rates return to summer highs. So no break in any kind of rates or anything either to help with any of this. So I think we're just going to see more and more of this, Chris.
Yeah. So I switched over to Yahoo Finance. One other thing I want to point out is, a lot of people focus on earnings, right? And a lot of people give earnings too much credit as to where we're going in the future. Now, earnings are an important thing, and most companies that have come out are beating earnings. I mean, Coca-Cola just topped earnings, but it's not the earnings you should be looking at right now. It's the future outlooks that these companies are doing. And I don't know many outside of GM, which is interesting. But GM's pretty much owned by the government, okay? But GM came out, they posted good, I think, better than expected earnings. And anytime you hear that, better than expected, it means they weren't expecting too much. But their future outlook for GM is up. So most companies that are posting earnings, even if they're beating largely banks, are posting weaker future outlooks because they're anticipating a slowdown, which is clearly articulated because yields on bonds are going up. When yields are going up, that means there's more risk in the near term. So like the bond market is showing you that there's a lot of risk in the near term. The yield curve, and actually I got to look at this because this has been kind of, I've kind of taken my eye off this. I want to see where we're at on the yield curve, because the yield curve basically will tell you, and we uninverted on it, which basically means that, yeah, there's no hope. We're going into a decline, a slowdown. So if we look at that, yeah, so the yield curve is back to, as of today, it looks to be normal. I'm trying to get the rates. So I'll come back to this in a second. I'm on Fred, which is an economic, let's see, indicator. Here, how about this? I'll just do 2-year Treasury and 10-year. Because all we're looking at is like, are you getting paid more for a 2-year bond than you are a 30-year or a 10-year? So here's the number. So the yield curve is back to normal. Right now, a 2-year government bond will pay you 3.5%. That's the coupon, the yield, the interest rate. And then a 10-year government bond pays you 3.88. So it is uninverted. Now, some of you might be like, oh, right, yeah, uninverted of the yield curve. That's good. No, that's terrible news. Because when it uninverts, it means we're headed down every time. It has never, ever been wrong. The inverted yield curve has predicted a recession every time, but there has been one time where it didn't. The uninverting of the yield curve, never been wrong. So just pointing out some of the stupid things that most people wouldn't know that is for the most part, useless knowledge if you really think about it. But for someone like me, it's very important knowledge, as are charts and everything else we look at. Now, let me hit on one other thing while we're on the economy and everything. There's this one economic newsletter, and I want to come over to Jimmy Barber 87. I think it's, sorry if I butchered that, on Instagram, but we'll come back to that, your question there, because it's a good one. So when I'm looking at this economist, and a lot of you, and I'll give you the names of the economists. One is Harry Dent, love him or hate him, like he's kind of boisterous. But the other one is very well respected, is Jim Rickards. So I subscribe to his. I watch all of his stuff. Don't love it all, but he, both, and just so you both know, every economist that I know of, for the most part, if they don't work for the Fed, are all pro-Trump, and that says a lot too. I mean, if economists are pro-Trump. So he says here, in the event that Kamala Harris wins in the White House, how will her policies, again, policies, nothing about liking or disliking, it's just about policies, impact the stock market overall during her presidency? And he says Kamala Harris's policies will be extremely negative for the stock market. She wants to raise corporate taxes, which will reduce corporate profits. She wants to drastically increase capital gains taxes, which will induce some forced selling ahead in the tax law change and reduce total returns for investors. She wants to penalize the oil and natural gas industry, which will hurt the valuations on major stocks like Exxon, Chevron, Marathon, which, while increasing gas prices at the pump for consumers, that's inflationary. Increase in fuel costs raise the cost of transportation, which raises the cost of almost every tangible good you ever buy. She supports green new scam initiatives in solar and windmills, including subsidies, which will result in more debt and wasted investment. She favors greater regulatory of wetlands. This isn't my opinion, folks. I'm just reading. Okay, so don't hate me for this. Waterways and use of federal lands, which will raise the cost of developers and natural resource exploration companies. Her open border policy will cause lower wages for the United States, which reduces consumption and slows the U.S. economy. What's there more to say that's a good Harris will be a disaster for the economy, for stocks. Again, one economist's opinion, but all that is off of her policy. And some people, and I did a YouTube video on this, we'll talk tariffs, and they'll say Donald Trump is going to put tariffs on China, on everything from China at 60%, which is true. Like, that's one of the things he's claiming to do. But let's not forget that Biden continued the tariffs from the Trump era. So Biden didn't can the tariffs. He kept them, and has even increased some of the tariffs on things like, anything like solar panels and stuff like that, which I believe, don't hold me to this, are like an 80 or 100% tariff right now. So it's not like the Democrats are against the tariffs, but Trump is being very open that he's going to put tariffs on all goods coming from our enemies or coming from foreign nations that don't reciprocate. And China, our biggest competitor, okay, the second largest economy in the world, China, we have a trade deficit with China of almost $423 billion, which means we export $420 some billion less than we import from China. So both of the Democrats and the Republicans are putting tariffs on this stuff from China, because you can't have a trade deficit like that and have a healthy economy here in the United States of America. You got to bring jobs back to the U.S. And one of the ways to do that is by inflicting some pain. Now, let's be clear. What is a tariff and who does it hurt? A tariff is a duty that is put on goods and services that come over from China and other places that he does the tariff on. Who pays the tariff? We do, folks. The company that's buying the goods from China. So if XYZ company in the United States of America buys goods from China, they're now going to have a tariff that they have to pay, a duty they have to pay of 60% more. So do you think that company is going to want to buy goods and services from China? Maybe, but do you think they're going to look for alternate sources in the United States of America where there's no tariff? 100%. So now if they look for goods and services from companies in the US when they've largely bought from China, what is that going to do for the companies that in the United States that they're going to be, buying product from? It's going to increase their sales, increase their profits, increase their workforce. Those people are going to have to hire people from the United States of America, which some will be immigrants. So we don't even need to get into the immigrant thing. The immigrants, illegals and legals, they should all be legals, which I think Trump will do a better job with that, but they will serve a major role. There are a lot of Americans that do not want the jobs that are available now because they don't pay. Immigrants will take those jobs. It is healthy. The immigrants coming into the U.S., the legal immigrants, let's focus on them, not the gangs and the cartels, but the legal immigrants coming into this country serve a very vital role for the geopolitical purposes of the United States and also the economy, because somebody's got to work those jobs. And as the U.S. population does age, baby boomers and silent generation, the immigrants coming in are young and willing to work and willing to do what most Americans are unwilling to do. So they serve a vital role. Military aged. Oh, that's another thing. Most of the immigrants that are coming in are military-aged men. What do we need? Military-aged men. What is a huge deterrent to our enemies? Well, one, military-aged men. No disrespect, but I'm going to hit below the belt. So, folks, please, put earmuffs on if you can't handle what I'm about to say. But when China and our enemies and Putin look over here at the United States and they watch the news and they watch the people that the Democrat put on the news, and they see transgenders, cross-dressers, they see weak, frail, old men and women. Do you think Putin has a lot of fear over that? No. When you see like military-age men that are eager and optimistic and strong, do you think Putin looks at them and is like, that's the threat? Well, I know that to be a fact. They did a podcast with a ranger, and that's exactly what they said. And Jay in my office also served many tours, and he will tell you that the only ones they fear, military-aged men. We got a lot of immigrants coming over, and a lot of them are those military-aged men. So when you're really looking to position for strength, that's what you do. And no disrespect, for the gay pride or any of that, but they're not going to take arms. You know what else Putin probably fears? Guns. I hate to say that, but you know what? Let's be real. Compared to Switzerland, Sweden, other European nations where they're not allowed to have guns, they're not. They don't. There is no way for them to protect themselves. So let's just assume that in the United States, we were attacked on our soil. What would happen? Military-age men, and I'm not going to rule out women, would take arms. Where would they take arms from? Their guns, their gun vaults, the weapons that are in their house. and they would protect. What would they protect? Their family and everything we have built here in the United States of America. That right there gives us ultimate strength. Now, I know Kamala has come on and said, she's not going to take our guns, but she's also then said, and so is Biden, they're going to take our guns. So which is it? You're going to take them or you're not going to take them? You're going to support it or you're not going to support it? I don't know. Gosh, there's so much to unpack there, but let me hit two more things. I'm on a rant. Might as well just continue this. I already hit the tariff thing, so let's hit this one, energy sector. All right, so this one says, will energy sector rebound in a pro-fossil fuel presidency, okay, and or continue struggling? So here's the economist's answer. The energy sector will rebound strongly under Trump. He will drill, baby, drill. I did a YouTube video on that. Trump will open up permits for new drilling on federal lands. He will expand drilling in the Gulf of Mexico and Alaska, of which he needs no approval from Congress for these things, okay? Not these things. He will complete the Keystone XL pipeline, which Biden shut down from Canada, which will also bring more oil into the U.S. at cheap prices, reducing our cost of oil. And oil's in everything. You know that? He will reduce subsidies on green new scam companies, which will improve the profitability of traditional oil and gas companies. Trump will also refill strategic petroleum reserves, which Biden conveniently literally sold so that he could maintain the pumps so he could, well, someone has to like Biden, so let's make gas cheaper by selling our strategic reserves. You can see how I feel about that. And anyway, so that's just stuff about another economist. I just wanted to make sure I pointed that stuff out. I went on a long rant there, Stephen. Let's come back over. I mentioned I'm going to hit Jimmy's question here. He said, like the game and the price is right. The longer the march up the mountain, the further the fall. And then he's referring to the stock market, and he's absolutely correct. The markets have just gone bonkers since $5.2 trillion in printing by the Fed, and ultimately artificially low interest rates created an inflationary period in a period of time that the stock market just rallied to new heights. But what goes up must come down. Stephen, I'm going to turn it over to you and shut up.
Yeah, no, I mean, that was a good rant there. I like it. I mean, I just was pulling up some data just to kind of see what's going on with some various assets. Something I wasn't even aware of, Chris, but gold hit an all-time high yesterday. Were you aware of that for the fourth day in a row?
Yeah, because of fear, man. The only reason gold ever goes up in price is because of pure fear. That's it, because gold is just a defensive play, period. You don't buy gold for interest. You don't buy gold for liquidity. You buy gold because you're scared to death that everything else is falling apart.
I got to say, we've been talking about buying gold and silver for the past few years, and it is up 33% year to date right now, on track to be the best year since 1979. In relation to that, 2007 was the last time gold had a 32% return, and we all remember what happened in 2008. On top of fear, though, Chris, keep in mind the U.S. national debt is also exploding higher, increasing by over $600 billion in just the last couple months, and fast approaching $36 trillion. And so just that U.S. dollar just continues to be worth less and less and less. And that's what I think drives a lot of the gold and silver markets also.
I agree. Can I just throw a political thing in there? Neither of the two candidates are going to help the deficit come down in the 4-year time frame that they're going to be in. Okay, they'll both raise the deficit. Just want to be clear about some things. And not only that, both of the candidates coming in certainly will probably both have the same effects with the dollar losing value. Just pointing out facts. Just so we can take those things off the table as discussions.
Yeah. And I mean, the U.S. money supply is growing again, over 2.6% over the last year, largest year-over-year increase since August of 2022. So if you remember, there's a brief, I guess, hiatus of money printing there for a little bit, and right back to it. So continuing to flood the economy with money.
Yeah. Here's an interesting thing, Stephen. I don't know if you saw this, but McDonald's, okay? And listen, like, we all know Trump went to that McDonald's, and then McDonald's put a post out. We don't endorse any political candidates, which is the right thing for the company to do. You know, he showed up, they had him there, served some French fries, had some laughs, fixed the shake machine. great. And then he left. But obviously, as a company as big as McDonald's, they definitely had to take a stance of saying, hey, listen, in light of what happened, we don't, support any candidate. We don't endorse any candidate. But now it's pretty interesting because take this for what it is. Okay, maybe it's just the media. Let me read this article. McDonald's shares fall after the CDC, Stephen, do some research on the CDC, says E. coli outbreak linked to quarter pounders. Does anyone find that odd? Trump goes to McDonald's. McDonald's makes a statement. Then literally days later, the CDC, all of a sudden, there's an E. coli breakout. Not saying anything, but to me, you just follow the signs and it leads you somewhere to the truth. Like that can't just be a coincidence. Royale. Stephen, you got anything to say about that? The agency said 49 cases have been reported in 10 states between September 27th and October 11th, with most of the illnesses in Colorado and Nebraska. Most sick people reported eating McDonald's quarter pounders. So don't eat any quarter pounders, man. Get the fries. The orange man might actually deliver them to you.
How cool would that be, though, for real?
Hey, can I ask a question? Does anyone know, why does Donald Trump look so orange? Like, he's obviously got one of those tanning booths, but why? Like, you ever wonder that? Because sometimes I gotta wonder, why is he orange?
Well, how about after Trump beat him up in that debate that put him out of the election? But following that, they started making Biden be orange for his next couple of appearances.
They did?
Oh, yeah.
And maybe that's a new thing. Maybe in the future, one of the trends that comes up through the Abercrombie and Fitches is, a cream you rub on your face that makes you orange. I mean, Steve Jobs, if you read his book or follow him, and he's just one of my all-time faves. He went through a period where he literally ate carrots every single day. That's all he ate. And his friends, it's in the book, said his skin was orange. It was he was turning orange. So I've been eating a lot of carrots. Oh yeah.
So this is Business Insider, which is a very, very left-leaning publication, but you're not losing your mind. Biden is getting more orange. So
maybe he called Trump up.
This was the thing that happened.
Tanning bed you got? Let me get one of those.
This is definitely.
But you think that's the same guy there? That could be two totally different people.
That's a whole nother question, right?
Yeah. I don't know. All right, let's see. What can we got to bring this thing home with a strong close. Folks, we got a really cool wealth webinar this afternoon at 1 p.m. Eastern. We're going to be diving into none other than whole life insurance policies, but we're going to do it in a unique way. We're literally going to mathematically solve a question that a lot of people have been asking is, how much does the loan interest rate matter? Because there's this huge thing, and I just dealt with it this morning. Stephen and I were laughing. It's funny how the universe works when your mind is on one thing, then all of a sudden something happens. You're like, that's bizarre, but we're going to kind of bring that into wealth webinar. It'll be super fun, but we're going to show you the difference between a 5% loan interest rate and a 7% loan interest rate. 7% being what you would maybe pay if you used a cash value line of credit from a bank. So we're going to kind of show you the math behind that. We're also going to talk about dividends and the history of dividends, which we've never done before. We've never done anything where we've gone into the history of dividends, but that right there is going to paint just an unbelievable picture for so many of you of how right now, single-handedly in our lifetime, is probably the absolute greatest time to bulk up on whole life insurance, because the dividend scales and where they are and where they're going. And we are absolutely going to be able to show you that bounce that, it'd kind of be like you're looking at a stock and all of a sudden you see it bounce and it's going up and you're like, oh, this sucker's going to run. You want to buy that stock, right? Well, you're going to see the same thing when it comes down to these whole life policies, but we're just going to mathematically dissect those two things. So join us at 1:00. You can do that by going to chrisnaugle.com. That's chrisnaugle.com, Naugle, and then just scroll down to wealth webinar, register, no cost, and you get books for free for doing it. So we're going to be doing that at 1:00. Let's see, Stephen, you got something to bring this home?
I don't know, man. 2 more weeks. One more. We got next week's the last What the F before the election. So I'm just kind of looking forward to it, to tell you the truth, and all being done with.
Yeah. The last thing I'm going to talk about is Tesla. Okay. We really haven't talked about Elon Musk, and he's been a very active man lately on the news and everything else. I mean, he's got his little scissors catching rockets falling, to the earth. Like he's got all sorts of wicked, crazy stuff.
Robots, he's giving away $1 million a day right now to people just for signing a petition. How wild is that?
That's nothing for him. I mean, does anyone realize how wealthy he is? Like if you break down like his wealth, like $1 million a day would be like all of us giving away like a quarter of a penny. That's probably about the equivalent of what he's doing. Maybe the full penny, but he's doing that just to get you to sign a petition. But one of the cool things, or not cool things, is there was a movie a long time ago. Actually, when was iRobot? Was that 2000s? Remember that movie iRobot?
Probably 20 years old now, but yeah.
And there was like the robots in there and the cars, and there's been a bunch of stuff floating around the internet, showing the movie iRobot, which I remember watching. It's kind of a frightening movie. And then what Elon just came out with, which is the I don't know what his robot's called, but the Toll 4. 04 was when iRobot came out. But what is Tesla's robot called? That one that he just debuted? Is it the it's not the iRobot, is it? Is it the Cyberbot? But then he's got the Cyber Car, which is a self-driving car, and he's got the Cyber Bus, which is a self-driving bus. But has anyone looked at the similarities between iRobot and the things that Optimus Robot? Oh my gosh, somebody watched. Anyway, Optimus Prime, Optimus Robot. When you compare the two to one another, it is so similar that it's scary. Yeah, there it is. Look at that. I mean, just look, like, come on. Do you see the similarities here? I can't make this shit up. You're going to tell me Elon didn't watch iRobot 15,000 times before he started creating this? The only thing is, the robots' faces are different because the Tesla robots don't have a face. Thank God, because that's what's creepy about iRobot. But look at that car. Almost identical. Look at the bus. Not very different. It's just crazy. So that's what we'll leave you on, just a little bit of useless information.
Well, also, it would not surprise me if he literally did this because of the movie iRobot. I mean, he did come out a couple of years ago and said he made the Starship design more pointy, right here, based on the movie that Sacha Baron Cohen was in, The Dictator, I think it was. So he wanted to, because in that movie they made it kind of look like well, you tell me what you think that looks like. So when Elon was building the Starship, he said he wanted to look more like that just because of that movie. So he definitely loves that kind of thing. And it's one of the reasons I love the guy. He's just so real. It's fun to see, man. It's cool to see someone like that just changing the world, literally changing the world.
I agree. It is very, very hard to not like Elon Musk. I mean, I don't like electric cars, but just to admire the man for his drive, for his just vision. I mean, when we look at Steve Jobs, he's a visionary and he saw things that nobody else could see. But like Elon, I mean, like literally, he's so much of a visionary that you have to ask yourself, is he from another planet? Honestly, I think that sometimes because I don't know, kind of like just like so many other greats out there. I mean, were they born in, were they born, I almost said the United States of America, were they born on Earth or another planet? Because some of this stuff is just so freakish. But yeah, folks, I hope you enjoyed this episode of WTF. We had a little bit of ranting, a little bit of raving, and a little bit of arguing, but all is in good fun for the show. Thanks for joining us for this episode. Thanks for making it fun. And go out there and just be nice to people, folks. Don't judge people by what they look like, by who they're voting for. I mean, but if they treat you poorly, just fucking punch them in the face. That's my answer. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time.